Okay, and we're live. Hi everyone. My name is Bryant Francis, and I am the tiniest square down here in the set of tiny squares in the bottom left hand of the screen. But my voice will be all around you today as we play this really cool game that you are seeing on the screen right now called Northgard. With me today, also in the bottom left hand corner, they are in the bigger squares, are Alex and Sebastien. Alex, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, hey, hi. I am Gamasutra editor Alex Waro. I've got a bad mic again, so I'm sorry if I'm a little quiet. Sebastien, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sebastien, you're with Shiro Games. Could you please introduce yourself and your game, which is in front of everyone right now?
Yeah, my name is Sebastien Vidal. I'm one of the co-founders of Shiro Games and one of the designers of the game. So Northgard, it's basically a Viking strategy game based on Norse mythology. What we try to do with Northgard is have a game that's a bit in between a civilization in terms of strategy and opportunities for the players, but also much more short-paced and probably easier to get into and with shorter sessions, basically.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm just going to point out, before I get into a game, okay, so some of the things we were interested in when we saw this game was, Alex and I both grew up as fans of Age of Empires, and it inherits some of the gameplay from that, which I haven't seen work. A lot of developers haven't gone for lately in the strategy market, like only Halo Wars 2 is comparable right now, I'd say. And then after that, we also heard you guys shot up the Steam charts, but you're still in early access. The game's not out yet, but you're like, we're #1 on Steam there for a couple days.
Yeah, the game has been out for 3 weeks now exactly, and it's been doing great. We've got a lot of positive feedback. We were at PAX just the last weekend, and we met a lot of players and journalists as well. And everybody's very happy, and most of the feedback is about getting back to the good old RTS, but with some innovation. And apparently, a lot of people have been missing RTSs.
Yeah. I'm going to pick for my clan here, I'm going to pick the Eichthner. Because I was reading the description yesterday, and it says they're expansionists. So I'm going to be trying to, I like exploring and expanding in these kind of games myself. Let's see.
I like sheep, so I would have gone with the sheep, but I respect your decision. That's
that is
fair.
Not phrasing. Anyway, first things first, just for those at home, the first thing that struck me as I played this game was that in Age of Empires, if I'd dropped into this map right now, I would have had to tell my villagers what to do, and mostly it would have been similar to this, gathering resources that were necessary, starting to build the first buildings, but my villagers can only operate in this game in this territory right here. Could you sort of talk about like the territory system that you've built and the way people have to like explore these with the scout units that I'm about to produce?
Yeah, so there are a few reasons for that. One of them is that we wanted something because we wanted shorter sessions and still people to be able to build a strategy on the long run. We had to slow the pace of expansion, basically. So on one hand, it's a bit artificial, but also it provides us with the opportunity to let the player settle slowly, but still have a feeling of settling land and expanding. So it works very well to allow the player to have this feeling of settling in really, and even at a short session, which was quite hard to do because in a game like Age of Empires, although the games can be very long, when you play multiplayer, especially on shorter maps, it's only 10 minutes or 15 minutes max, and you don't really feel like you belong to the world or you're inside the world. And we had a lot of focus on atmosphere and the feeling as a player to be able to build your own village at your own pace. So that's mainly why we did that.
How did that play out in playtesting? Because I agree with you. I feel like when I was playing Age of Empires 2 as a youngin, I loved the longer campaign scenarios and the skirmishes. But in multiplayer, it would just be over in half an hour. But that was because people that's how they wanted to play. So how did you? Was there any frustration when you were playtesting with this kind of system, and how do you mitigate that as a developer?
Well, actually, there was no frustration at all. I mean, most of the people who tested the game actually thought it was a kind of board game vibe, basically, and they actually love to have this slow-paced. Most of them actually didn't want to have people knocking on their door after 10 minutes, whether it's PvP or not, and they actually liked and enjoyed the fact that it would take time to be able to actually attack someone or be attacked. And yeah, most of the feedback was, you know what, guys, that's great. We can play at one pace, and that's what we want to do.
Nice. We should talk a little bit, if you have a second, about Shiro games in general, because what I think is really interesting about this game, beyond its look and its success early on in Steam, is that it's very much a departure from your studio's earlier work. I know Shiro from the Evoland games, or the Evoland games, however you pronounce them,
yeah.
which are colorful RPGs. And this is like not at all, as far as I can tell, in any way an RPG. So how did you make that switch, and why?
Well, the how was easy. I mean, most of the people in the studio were fed up with and could not close their eyes without seeing pixels all the time. So we had to do something else.
Yeah.
But really, it's just a genre that we love, that most of the people at the studio really love. We've all played from Settlers back in the day to Age of Empires to StarCraft, StarCraft 2, Civilization, all the 4Xs. So yeah, there was a lot of interest for a game like that from the people in the studio. So yeah, we thought we had a lot of experience with it as players at least, and we could probably make something with it. So basically, as a studio, we really just do the games we like. So we have a lot of retro gaming fans, that's why we made Evoland, and we have a lot of strategy fans, which is why we made this game. And we're probably going to continue with totally different games in the future.
Nice. Did you use the same engine, or did you switch engines for this game?
It's the same engine, but it's been boosted a lot. Basically, it's all developed in-house. So we had a 2D engine and a 3D engine for Evoland because we needed both. We had a lot of tools as well to do level design in 2D, 3D, and with different gameplays, with shoot them up and side scroller and well tactics and a lot of things really.
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting to develop. So we had a lot of tools already available, but because the quality of the game is much better with Northgard, we had to develop more tools like shaders and so on. So it was quite a bit of work, but we have a crazy programmer who's working all day and night, so it works out in the end.
Nice. Sorry, Brad, I didn't mean to step over you there. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say that Shady Pyro, who's in the chat, says that they love this game. So, right on. Thanks for joining us, Shady. And
Thank you.
If you have any questions for Sebastien, make sure you ask them, because we will ask them to him on air. Let's see.
Yeah, I think Brian's going to try and focus on not dying out there in the wilderness, but I'll be keeping an eye on chat as well.
Yeah.
So. Drop them in. So let's talk about the switched in engines. As you mentioned earlier, this game uses hacks, right? Which is an open source toolkit. Can you talk a little bit? I know maybe you didn't get your hands dirty directly so much with that, but can you talk about in general why you guys made the switch to use that technology?
Well, actually, it's a technology that's developed by ourselves. So,
my bad.
Yeah, my co-founder at Shiro Games is actually the guy who developed everything. So the language itself, plus all the tools around it, or most of the tools around it. Because it's open source, we have a lot of people working on it from all over the world. But yeah, that's why we use it, just because he knows it inside out, and it's quite easy for us.
Nice. How has that shaped the way you make games? Because it's not so often that we get to talk to developers who have people in house who are developing and maintaining an open source game development framework. Like, has that choice shaped the games you choose to make? Does it narrow your focus, or does it empower you to do interesting things with games because you are working and honing the tools at the same time you are building the games themselves?
Yeah, I think it does, because basically, since we really know the technology very well, it's quite easy and efficient, at least, to develop new features for it. So whenever we need something, basically we just throw 1 or 2% at it for very short time, maybe hours, sometimes days, and generally it's done. So for us, it's much easier than using a commercial engine.
Nice. Sorry, it reminds me of at Valve. I was talking to someone at Valve probably a month ago now, about Source, right? And obviously hacks and Source are two significantly different things, but they're both used to make games, and they're both used by people in studios as they are working on their own projects and then sort of rolled out to the world at large. Now, I gather Hacks is a little different in that it actually has its own foundation and everything, and it's very much an open source cross-platform project. But it's interesting to talk to somebody who actually has a direct link into it. Let's see. Someone in chat says this game reminds them of Settlers 4, which is interesting because I never played the Settlers games. Can you talk at all about any inspiration you took specifically from those games? They always seemed kind of strange to me growing up and kind of odd, like difficult to understand.
Yeah, I only played the very first. I think the first two Settlers probably, and I played some again a few months ago just to see if the nostalgia was still there. And well, the games were very bare-bone, at least the first two ones. But yeah, we did get some inspiration from that, from Banished as well, from Age of Empires. What we took from that was we wanted a real-time game because we wanted something that was a lot faster than most of the usual 4Xs, like Civilization. But we also liked the way maybe the zoning system and the tile system actually was influenced by Settlers, because you had frontiers borders that you had to push as you progress through the game.
Right.
So there was some kind of artificial limitation to your expansion. I'm just thinking about that now, but maybe it had an influence. But clearly, yeah, those types of games that were an RTS, but not a click fest like StarCraft, where you really have to be very, very fast in your thinking and actions. Those types of games definitely influenced us a lot.
Yeah. Did you? This is probably obvious, but did you grow up in France?
Yeah, I spent 10 years in the UK, but yeah, most of the time was in France. Yeah.
Did you feel like the Settlers games were very popular or well known there? Because I grew up in and around the U.S. and I always felt like they were a presence, but I always felt they were sort of like a European game that was like slightly beyond me in a weird way. Like it was just it seemed strange and interesting, and I want to know if that was on point or if I was just a strange child.
Yeah, I think it was a bit strange. It was a German game, if I remember correctly, and the Germans are very well known for their big gaming culture and big board game culture as well. And I think that game was very influenced by that. But it was quite successful in all over Europe.
I have more questions about the game itself before we get off this. Like, do you play a lot of board games, and do you find tabletop games in general are part of your studio's development culture?
Yeah, I think so. We have, well, at least half of the staff plays board games regularly, and I play board games every week. And I'd love to create one at some point. We'll see.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's clearly an influence. I think now that it's getting really, well, much bigger, it's going to be even more an influence. I think a lot of people who talked about Northgard and said it had a board game vibe. I think it was actually a good selling point for them. We didn't do that on purpose, but I think it might become a good marketing USP in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder, do you think there's anything about board games, or what is it about board games and board game design that appeals to you as a video game developer? Like what do you take away from that experience that you apply to your actual work?
Well, if I'm honest, not a lot, because most of the fun with board games is the actual social interaction. And I think that doesn't apply very well to video games. Even if you play multiplayer on Skype with your friends, you don't have the same social aspect. And if I'd never designed a board game, but if I were to try that, I guess I would have to focus a lot on the social interaction, what players are doing together or against each other. And you don't see that, not in the same way in video games. I think it's much more abstract in the way you play.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's really interesting because when you are working on tabletop games, so often you have to focus your work because the game itself has to be completely comprehensible to a human mind. Whereas like video games, the computer, you can offload calculations and simulation to the computer all day. But with a tabletop game, everyone has to be able to understand it and then also have a fun conversation and
Yeah. I mean, if I were to try to do Northgard on the tabletop, that would never work. Just all the calculation for the economics and all the resources gathering, that's a lot of code, and that would be just a mess to manage on a board game.
Yeah. There's a question in chat actually from someone about the game itself. Older Priest is asking, will there be another method of getting happiness that is clan specific, like Militia with Wolf Clan?
Yes, there will be. Next week, actually.
Oh, yeah?
We're releasing a new clan next week, which is a Raven clan. and those guys are merchants and explorers, and they have one tech basically that allows you to gain more happiness depending on the number of tiles you have discovered. So the more you explore, you don't have to control it, but the more you explore, the more happiness it will bring to your clan. And
So yeah.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna keep hitting you with questions all day. I gotta say, it's been like 2 weeks since GDC. We haven't really had an interview, so this is just very exciting, and I'm happy to ask you things like, what is it like to try and add a new clan into a game like this in early access? What are you considering, and what balance changes do you have to make when you're sort of figuring out how to add the Raven clan in?
Well, it's quite hard because we want all of them to have a specific gameplay, and we're not even quite yet with the clans we have already. So, for example, the clan of the stag is a bit too bland. It's good. It's easier to get a big territory and to have high production in the late game, but we don't feel it's unique enough. It's like more of the same basically. Whereas what we did with the goat actually I think is really good because they can survive with just 2-3 tiles. And no other clans can do that. Basically, they can survive with very few resources, and they can actually strive with that. The wolf is alright because of the happiness you get from having warriors. So you have to play aggressively if you want to be successful, and that works in a very different way as well. And your warriors cost less food as well. So we're really pushing the players to play aggressively with this clan. And what we did with the Raven is to basically it's going to be very different because you can actually colonize new land with money instead of food. So you have to have a very strong economy and build it from the very beginning of the game. And we have a specific building to help with that. So it's quite hard because as I said, we want to have a specific gameplay every time, and we're not very happy with what we have on some clans already, and we'll get back to that in the coming month. So yeah, we have to find new features all the time and new things we can play with to provide a new experience. So that's where the challenge is.
Right on. Brian, do you find yourself driven to play defensively, aggressively? Like, how you feeling in there?
I just like I frankly just like building things. Like I like expanding and I like building. That's why I picked this faction. Because I'm not so keen on like you said. I don't want to knock down have people knocking on my door for war just a few minutes in. I just want to. I like exploring, and when I play games like this, I really love. I love getting to just poke around out there and see what's out there. Oh no, Sebastien, how do I store food in my silos? Because I'm getting a report. I'm getting word that rats have invaded.
You just have to build a silo, but if it's early in the game, it's an advanced building, so you have to upgrade your tunnel first.
Yeah, and I just got stone, so Bill, that's gonna have to wait a minute.
Otherwise, you can spend all your food on colonization or doing a feast. That will spend your food, and the rats get nothing.
The rats get nothing. The rats get nothing.
The secret is, Sebastian, we actually invited you on today to help Brian through his first match because we're having these little rusty.
Third match, thank you.
Third match.
The rats didn't pop up yesterday.
So I would love to know why you picked like a very Nordic theme for this game. I find it very charming. The game is colorful and fun, but it's not necessarily what I would expect out of Shiro. Why did you choose Nordic for Northgard?
That was a very long discussion internally, but what we liked about it is one of the goals with Northgard is to have a game that's relatively realistic. So even if we have some magic, it's not in the hands of the player. It's in the world, and it's actually fighting against you. And there's not a lot of it. If you look at the game, any screenshot, apart from 1 or 2 exceptions, it looks like almost the real world, not in terms of realism of the graphics, but what's available to you and what you see on the screen.
Yeah.
And we wanted that because, as I said earlier, we want to have a strong survival aspect to the game, and it's hard to have people really stress about their daily living if they have magic and supernatural effects and everything at their disposal. So that's why we went for a world where we can have some magic, but it integrates quite well with Norse mythology. But at the same time, it's historical as well, and it's not infused with magic all the time like heroic fantasy would be or anything like that. So that was one of the main decisions, and also because we wanted the atmosphere to be quite strong. The North world generally was quite good for weather effects. We can have snow, we can have snowstorm, we have a blizzard, we can have rain, and we're going to add more of these and we'll add more gameplay effects to these as well. So it was quite interesting aesthetically, and also to strengthen these survival aspects.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's interesting because as a French studio, is everyone who works at Shiro sort of a French descent, or do you have folks from all over the world, like from
No, it's mostly French people, I think, for now.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because Norse mythology is a common touchstone for creating interesting fantasy stories, as is all other kinds of mythology. I don't see a lot about I don't see a lot of historical simulations like this that touch on like French history. Like I don't and I confess that I don't know a lot about it, or French mythology or anything like that. And I'm sure a part of that involves Viking culture and stuff. But like I think it's interesting that you went and chose Viking as something you were passionate about when there are so many other tricky choices to make about where to set your game. Do you think it was appealing also to your player base? Do you think part of why you guys saw such early success on Steam?
Yeah, I think it does work. I mean, people like to have a bit of fantasy when they play. It's entertainment, after all. And if it's, we wouldn't do something that's purely historical for this kind of game. It would work, and it's working for a lot of people. Obviously, Age of Empire was one of these. But we wanted to have a bit of magic, even if it was not in your hand and against you. That strengthened the survival again. And
right.
Yeah, and we all feel in the studio that we feel more at ease with a bit of fantasy, and that allows us to do more different things. We're a bit more free with an historical game. You have to do it right, and you have to follow basically the history and everything. And yeah, it's less freedom for the developer, I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Also, I think what is interesting is, we saw you guys do very well on the Steam charts when you in early access. But I think something we always want to ask developers who are seeing decent success in early access is, how do you plan to roll that forward into full release? Like when this game is finally out of early access, like how do you think you will continue to see continued success, or are you concerned at all that you might be like peaking early and you might have a tricky time like getting the word out post launch, or is that not a concern at all?
Well, it's always tricky to get the word out when you're small in the studio, because we have like zero marketing budget, so it's mostly word of mouth and friends talking, really. But that being said, I think the game has attracted quite fans are quite focused on the game. They like it a lot. They've started Discord channels and Reddit pages, and there's quite a bit of buzz around it, and it's starting to build a community. And I think with what we have planned for the early access, so after the next clan, we're going to add multiplayer, so there will be PvP and a co-op mode as well, where you play as a team against Northgard itself. So that could be quite interesting as well. And it works quite well on Steam, because friends are going to talk, because it's co-op and they want to play together and so on. And after that, there will be a campaign and then another clan. So we have quite a bit of content planned that will hopefully keep the buzz going until release. And we have some ideas for after release as well. So I would say, as an indie studio, we're not worried.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear you have basically no marketing budget. I think a lot of devs are in a similar situation, and they all are seeking innovative ways to get the word out about their game and make sure it lands in front of the people who will enjoy it the most. How have you tried to do that? If you really don't have any money to put into marketing, how are you getting the word out about this game?
Well, we did a bit. I was exaggerating a little. We used a PR agency in the US and another one in Europe. So for the 2-3 months around the release of the early access, so we had access to some press, but that was it really. Apart from the trip to PAX last weekend, that was all the money we spent on it. So it was really not a lot. But I think really a success on Steam nowadays, especially when there's more and more games on Steam. The way we look at it is we tried to do a game that would appeal to a niche. RTS players, people who love Age of Empires, and we think there's not a lot of RTS games, and the ones that are out are almost all the same. So we try to do something that will appeal to these people by having something a bit more new, more modern, and with some innovative features as well. And I think nowadays targeting a niche is a good thing, because in a global world, a niche is not so small now, and at least it's a very qualified audience. You know who they are, you know what they like, and it's easier to get a game for them that they will enjoy. So that's how we looked at it from the beginning, from the positioning of the project, from the art direction, from the world, and from the complexity of the gameplay as well, and the length of the game. That's mostly how we looked into it. And also, I think the most important part when you release on Steam is probably, it might sound stupid, but really the first picture that people will see, that's probably one of the most important deciding factor for people. When they are just browsing on Steam and see a nice picture with Northgard and a nice landscape with a big sword and a small village, they might think, yeah, well, that's intriguing, I'll click on it, and then your first screenshots are probably going to make or break it, basically.
Yeah, I think you're right. Someone in chat, Older Priest again, would like to know how long will players have to suffer before they can play multiplayer? I don't know if that's something you want to talk about here.
That's suffering to me.
Can.
Multiplayer is suffering to me. I'm gonna get whooped.
Yeah.
So we have a PvP version working in the studio already. There's still some tweaks and work to do on it. Probably, I would say a month or two of work. And we also want to have the co-op version as well. So maybe we won't release the two together. We will maybe release the first PvP version so that people are satisfied and not too angry with us. But we think the co-op version might be even more interesting, because that's not often seen in RTS games.
Right.
A co-op versus, not just versus another clan, but versus as clans against the world itself. So it's totally asymmetrical. And for that, we'll probably add more different types of enemies and a specific battle condition for this game mode. But I think that will be more interesting than straight PvP.
So you mentioned you just went to PAX. I assume that was PAX East, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to know, first of all, how cold it was, and second of all, what your experience was like on the floor. Because we talked to a lot of developers who value PAX as a place to generate buzz about their game and play test it in front of people. But some who I talk to who don't have very approachable games, like games that might take a half hour to get into, like say a strategy game or something like that, they have a less than optimal time on the floor, because there's so many people and so many games to play that if you can't just drop in and play for 10 minutes and walk away, some players will have a bad experience. Was that your experience at PAX? How did it go?
So to answer your first question, it was well below freezing.
Yeah.
And windy too. Typical Boston weather, I guess. But anyway, I agree. I mean, when we went to PAX with a game that's an hour and a half to play, we were thinking, well, what do we do with that, basically? And in the end, we just put the game out there on PCs, and people were queuing and waiting half an hour to play it. So we had to kick people off the computers once in a while, because they were really wanted to play a full game, really.
Sure.
But we had 2, 3, 5, 4 people queuing behind them, and we had to kick them out, unfortunately. But most people really enjoyed it. I think it worked out well for us. A lot of people actually went away with a small card we printed and said, "I'm gonna buy it and talk to all my friends," because they really loved it. Just with that feedback, I think we probably paid for the trip with just the games we sold just by talking to people and showing it.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we had press meetings as well. So I think it was very successful. Obviously, our neighbors had arcade games with 4 controllers and a lot of people shouting and enjoying themselves. And that was we talked to them, and they actually said they had developed this game especially for shows like this.
Yeah.
It worked out very well. We didn't attract this kind of crowd, but I was still surprised people were literally queuing for half an hour to play it, or even more sometimes.
Did you learn anything from watching them play on the floor, or not so much?
Yeah, we did. I mean, most of it we play tested quite a bit, so we had most of it nailed down already. And the things that are still striking out, we know what they are, and we're going to fix them or change them. But yeah, there was some things, but mostly minor habits that people have, and that's maybe we could tweak that a bit more, make this a bit more obvious. Which was just small things, really.
Brian, how you doing in there? Have you run into any?
I'm learning what happens when you don't pay attention to one resource at the expense of others.
Yeah.
Why? We want better
Did you get
housing.
attacked? I was too tied up in talking. I didn't notice. Why is your building on fire?
I'm struggling to. I'm now just I wasn't working on my skull generation at all. Now my people aren't happy because they want better houses, and I need to wait for a little more skulls to come in order to get the money I need. Come on. I'm trying to. I got Draugr about to invade my territory. My guys are all wounded because I was trying to get some stuff done. It's just it's a lot to manage, but it's still slower. I mean, the slower pace is nice. Oh no, that Hunter's Lodge is dead. The Hunter's Lodge blew up. Why? I built too much.
So, Sebastien, I want to ask you about survival as a gameplay mechanic, but before I do that, I should ask, what kind of games do you play in your off time? What kind of video games do you enjoy? If any?
A lot of things, really. I play a lot of Civilization. I play League of Legends. I play what else? I played Stellaris, which is another 4X space game. Really, a lot of different things. I tend to pick one game and play it for a long time, generally.
Yeah.
It's that, or I just try it for a few minutes and to see what it is and what it's like, and then don't get back to it. So I've got strange habits, I guess. But
no, not at all. I think a lot of those games are fantastic. What I do notice is that none of them are what I might consider hardcore, Steam-centric survival games. Like, I didn't hear a Long Dark, a Banished. I didn't hear an Ark. But you mentioned earlier when making this game that you wanted to make sure it had a strong, there was a strong pressure to survive on the player.
Boy, yeah.
No.
So I want to ask, what it is that you think why do you think that is appealing to players, and why you made it a strong focus of this game's design?
Well, if you look at the sales number of any game with survival on Steam, I guess that's your answer.
I didn't want to assume, but that's kind of what I figured.
Yeah, but beyond that, no, that's something I like too. Actually, I don't like it too much when it has a lot of RPG and crafting elements, because it's generally very grindy instead of just survival.
Yeah.
So I prefer to play Don't Starve than Conan Exile or Ark, for example. They are probably very good game. I haven't played them, but I prefer it slow-paced and without the grind, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do. Obviously, grind in RTS does not have its place anyway. But we added a lot of features to make people feel like it's going to be hard to survive the next winter. So all the weather effects, just the cloud cover, and then the rain, and then the snow and the storms, all that already puts the player in the mood, even without talking about gameplay. And we have got a calendar in the corner of the game, just above the minimap, that tells you when the next winter is coming. It also tells you when there's going to be an event, like a blizzard or an earthquake or a rat infestation and so on. So you always have a heads up and know what's coming. It's generally nasty, and you have to manage it the best you can. And when it's a blizzard coming, the winter is going to be awful, and you have to have huge resources of food and wood, otherwise everybody will freeze to death. So you have to prepare in advance, and maybe don't do an attack you had planned to do, or hope you won't be attacked just right now. The game is a lot about adaptation. Unlike Civilization, where you generally pick a victory condition before you even start the game, in Northgard you really have to adapt to what's happening, scout around, see what resources are available, and see what all the other clans are doing, and then change your plans accordingly. Otherwise, you can still pick a condition from the beginning, but it's going to be a lot harder.
Yeah, we should circle back, because I actually find this part really interesting. Why did you choose to make this game have multiple Civ-esque victory conditions? I'm sure I'm wrong, but I can't remember ever playing an RTS that had that kind of win state option.
I can't either, actually. Maybe Sin of the Solar Empire? Maybe
yeah,
not.
Maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, we wanted it, as I said, we wanted it to be a game that you could play at your own pace. So that's why the difficulty between easy and hard, and actually we can talk about that because it's really hard to change the difficulty of the game for us, but that's another topic. But the difficulty in easy mode is supposed to let you play as much as you want. The AI is probably not going to win unless you go to the movies or something, and
Sure.
and we really want people to be able just to build their village, to explore Northgard, to have fun with everything around them, to kill the bad guys and win either way they want. And on hard mode, on the other hand, the game is really unforgiving, and even just the initial setting, if you don't have any food on the adjacent tiles, you know it's going to be extremely hard. But we wanted that, so just because we want players to be able to play the way they want. If they want to have a nice, even nicer than a banished experience where you can take your time, even if you can have difficult times sometimes with winters and so on.
Yeah.
We want to have a kind of city building that you play at your own pace, that you have fun with, enjoy the atmosphere and not feel too stressed out by it. And at the same time, if you want to choose it, have a very stressful and very hard experience.
So we should dig deeper into difficulty because it sounds like that was something that was a thing.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to balance that out and try to figure out how to handle it?
Well, it's hard and it's not good right now, if I'm honest. Just because the maps are procedurally generated, so they're all unique, and because of that, it's quite hard to find a balance between forcing everything around you, like you're willing to have one field and some fish and some stone right next to you, and that would not be as fun because you don't have to scout anymore. You know what you're going to get, and it's going to be the same thing every game. And on the other hand, what we have right now is it's a lot more random than that. We have a lot of rules for generation, so that it's still fair and it's still interesting. But the games where you have no food in the next 4 or 5 tiles are really, really a drag.
Yeah.
And that's quite hard because we don't want to make the game hard by making it boring, obviously. So we're working more on improving the difficulty of the AI and maybe tweaking a few things on the generation of the map, but not too much, because otherwise it gets from easy to boring instead of easy to hard. And that's really a struggle with a procedurally generated world, basically, where you cannot do everything you want.
Yeah, it seems tricky just to have a proc gen system that can like reliably deliver usable resources, right? Because like so often now when we talk to devs who rely on proc gen or anything like that, like there's always the outlier that something that you'll just get like a mulligan. You'll just get like a totally crazy map, or you'll get a map that has nothing on it, and that's kind of the fun, right? Like that's kind of like every once in a while a player will load into a round, and the map will just be nuts. But here that's like kind of a huge bummer. Like if there's nothing around, then that game's basically over.
Yeah, well, you can still win, and some people actually, we saw some people on Reddit or YouTube going for trying, actually mulliganing the other way around, trying to get the worst map possible and still trying to win. People are like that. But that's not our goal as a developer, obviously. We want every game to be challenging but enjoyable. It's quite hard to tweak. We probably have to add even more rules so that every beginning is at least okay, even if it's not great, and play on other systems to add more difficulty.
Have you learned anything else interesting by watching YouTubers play your game? Because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, especially at the beginning where we didn't have as much feedback. We had some people who didn't know that they could colonize other tiles, and they were stuck on their first tile going, well, that's good, but I've got 5 buildings now, I can't do anything anymore, I can't build, it's all red, what can I do? And we had quite a few, well, it's still a small number, but there were a few people doing that, so we added a mini tutorial with just a few windows telling you what to do step by step. There was a few things like that were quite interesting. Yeah,
it's been really fun to watch. There's a lot of focus on YouTube as a place where people are, making a lot of money, having a lot of influence in the game industry. But less often we talk about how weird it is for people to basically play test games for developers without knowing it. Especially now that early access is so big. Did you guys use YouTube at all as a way of drumming up buzz? Like, was that a significant marketing channel for you, or not so much?
Yeah, it was significant. Yeah, we had, I don't know how many keys I've sent to YouTubers, probably something like 300.
Yeah.
And that's from small channels with just 1,000 subscribers to some very big ones with 2, 3, 4 million subscribers. So yeah, I'm not sure because it's hard to measure how much you get back from that. But I'm pretty sure when you get a few thousand views to 100,000 views sometimes on a video, that must trigger some sales, I guess.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Basically, I really wonder like who is the influencer for strategy games? You know, like when it comes to RTS, who is top dog? Where's that community playing? I don't even know.
Yeah, it is a small community, and there's not a lot of games coming out. So I don't think there's a lot of people dedicated totally to and only to strategy games. There are some because we had some people saying that channel I'm playing Total War and I'm playing StarCraft, and so there are some people who are dedicated to this kind of games. But yeah, there's not a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you're right. I also think a lot of the older games continue to be played and replayed. In part because some of them have like really vibrant mod communities. Have you given any consideration to embracing and working with modders, or is that like going to be tricky with this engine?
Yeah, on that game it's not easy. We could, but because the maps are generated, it's the gameplay with level design maps would be very different. It would be interesting because we're considering doing it for PvP anyway, because in PvP you cannot have the disparities we have right now in the different starting positions. So we're probably going to either level design the PvP maps or at least have very strict rules for generation. So we could go that route, but the whole gameplay is actually around scouting to see what's out there, and so the generation works very well for the gameplay. With a fixed map, it's probably not as fun. But we could create challenges like with a big choke point and a lot of bad guys behind it, and that's more or less what we're going to do for the co-op mode anyway.
Nice.
Just so you know, I had to restart because I did not. I learned the ways of money very quickly, and that you need money.
Yeah, all right, Brian. It's a quick post-game report. Like, what will you do differently this time?
I'm gonna go down the research path to make sure I'm getting money, as well as like I'm gonna balance out my resource stuff, because before I was not. I went all the way down this first top tree up here with sharp axes, and I thought, oh well, the money thing worked out okay last time. It'll probably work out this time. I was wrong.
What if you just went like pure conquest, like just
I don't
just,
like playing strategy games like that. Like it is, which is funny because that's what Age of Empires is. But I like just building, and then like when I was playing Age of Empires as a kid, I would play with islands, and I would build like my forts and forts of islands, and then I was just wanting to go to war. I would just dump everything. Just don't want to deal with other people. Story of my life and story of the freaking playing video games.
It's the story of how you ended up playing video games in front of the entire internet. That makes total sense.
The entire internet being like what, the handful of people who are joining us today.
Well,
thank you all for watching, by the way.
Those people are diehard, and I don't want to. They're fantastic.
They're great.
So, in the absence of any other questions, I just want to know how you are feeling about the game's progress and what the studio's plans are for the future. I know you're deeply enmeshed in this right now, Sebastien. I don't want to like take the focus off of that. But what's interesting about Shiro to me is that you're a multi-game studio now. You guys got your start. I heard you got your start like out of a game jam, like a decade ago or something, working on Evoland, and now you have 2 games under your belt. You've got a 3rd one coming out. Do you expect? What's the plan for the future? Do you plan to focus on this game, on strategy games in general, try a new genre? What are you thinking?
Oh, well, 2 of these. We're going to continue to focus on this one because there's a lot to do still in the early access, and we have quite a few ideas after that for post-release, either as DLC or free content. So there's quite a lot to do there still. We have plans for other games after that. We are actually going to hire a few people now that we can. That's good. And we have, the thing is, we don't want to become a AAA studio. Even if we had millions, we wouldn't do that. We really just want to continue doing games like, Northgard was probably like less than 18 months development from the very beginning, prototyping and the whole development. and that was 6 people. So we tend to develop very fast. That's one of the advantages of having your own in-house engine that you know by heart.
Yeah.
And we want to continue being quite nimble like this and get games out relatively fast and efficiently. So even if we get bigger, we'll probably start doing several games at the same time instead of doing a bigger one.
Nice. I would love to know also more about the engine, and what you think it's best for. This is sort of a silly question, and we talked about it earlier, but hacks and hacks Flixel and everything, that is something that I think we don't talk enough about on Gamasutra. We have some bloggers who are very passionate about it, but we don't really talk about it very much at all compared to Unity and Unreal and everything else. So, given your studio's experience with it, where do you think it really shines in terms of game design?
Well, I guess like most, there's a lot of tools around it that we have developed as well. So we have something called CastleDB, also open source that anybody can use. And that's actually a database meant for game design. So it's actually very easy to plug into any engine, and it's very easy designed for a game designer to just it's basically Excel, but a lot easier to use. That you can have pictures and you can import them, and it's very easy. So we have a lot of tools around it that are quite useful as well. I guess like any engine, if you don't know much about it, it's probably easier to go with a commercial engine. And if you have specific needs, like ProcGen, for example, or if you have people in your studio who can manage it, then you'll be more efficient with an in-house engine that you can tweak and do whatever you want with it. So, and because we have the guy who created the language, obviously, we're in that category.
Cheating. So you're cheating.
Yeah, maybe a bit.
Yeah, so that is sort of like terra incognita for us in terms of what you can do with that kind of engine. Going forward, how do you feel about the state of indie game development in 2017? Since Shiro has been around for a while, you've seen more than your fair share of market turns and uptwists. How are you feeling now? Do you feel confident? Are you a little nervous? What's it like to be an indie developer in 2017?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah. No pressure.
I think nowadays you probably like 7-8 years back, you could just have a great idea for a game or a great art direction and just go for it. Because at that time, Greenlight was 10 games every semester or something like that. Yeah. And everybody was talking about those 10 games. So it was quite easy to get some audience, basically. But nowadays it's not like that at all. So you really have to look at you don't have to be only a talented game developer, you need to be business savvy as well. And I think the marketing aspect and just the positioning of your game concept from the very beginning is very important and very key. So if I had one piece of advice for new developers just coming out of school, I would say really try to get a grasp of the market and what's working and what's not, and why it's working and not, and not only from a game design and gameplay perspective, but also from a really marketing positioning and the adequation between your art direction, the complexity of your gameplay, the audience you're targeting, and all that must be very coherent to work nowadays.
Yeah, why do you think survival games are so successful right now?
I think they've always been. It's probably something deep in the human psyche, I would say.
Yeah.
People love to have a big struggle and come out on top. I don't know.
A question from the chat is specifically: is the game going? I mean, you kind of answered this earlier when you're talking about your inspiration from a Nordic setting. Is this game going to have more connections to Norse mythology? If so, in what way? And I guess the question I would ask for you as a Gamasutra interviewer is, as a designer, how do you feel Norse mythology inspires you in your work?
Well, I would say, as I said earlier, it's something quite close to us as Europeans because, well, it's just an hour's plane from here.
Yeah.
And we generally travel quite a lot, so it's something personally, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I've been to Iceland, I've been to Scandinavia, and just the landscape inspired me, if I'm honest. It's really beautiful and very different from any other places. I mean, in Iceland, you really get like lunar landscape almost that are very impressive, and all the history of it. I mean, in Europe, most of the history is deeply rooted into the Christian religion, and it's basically the Norse mythology, at least in Europe, and I think anywhere in the world, is like a bit of fantasy that you don't have in good old Europe. So that's very inspiring for us, I would say. It's because it's not different. There's a bit of magic to it. Old gods and medi-gods and pantheons and all that is quite interesting.
Yeah, I sort of I sort of stumbled through a question about that earlier. When I think it's so interesting that like Nordic myth and like small chunks of Nordic culture have like spread throughout a good bit of Europe, in part because the Vikings did.
Went everywhere.
So I'm going to have a specific question in just a second, Alex. But just let you know, I got something after your next question. I got a good one.
Oh well, I wanted to follow up the question that the commenter asked it by just pointing out like how specifically as a studio did you research Norse mythology as you were trying to incorporate it into the game? Did you do any significant research? Did you just pull from stories you heard as a kid, or?
No, well, we did some good research. I mean, personally, I went to most of the Nordic countries at some point in my life, so I had some real personal experience. And I visited a lot of museums and so on. But mainly we read a few books on Norse mythology and Norse history. Looked at a lot of everything that was available online, especially on the pantheons and different gods and what they were doing. The names of the clans in the game all come from actual mythological animals from the mythology. The design of the buildings are also all set into Norse architecture from the time. So yeah, we did a bit of research on everything, on mythology itself, architecture, and any other cultural aspects like the food and everything. We don't want to, even the fields. They actually had some fields at the time, even despite the weather and the and the rocky grounds.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Brian, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So in Europe, how much are you all taught about this thing I learned about like in the last couple of years called the Hanseatic League? No, like this isn't game design related, but I swear like this baffled me because I'd never heard about it until the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, no.
I had never heard about it until now.
Oh really? Oh god. I'm sorry. Then I won't bother. This is a game development stream, not a European history stream. It was just something I learned about a trade organization that like dominated Northern Europe and is sort of tied to like areas we consider like Viking or Icelandic or whatever. Like.
Oh yeah, that was more Germanic. Yeah.
Germanic.
That was more Germanic than Viking, but yeah, it's close.
Yeah. I just had a moment where I learned about it. It was just this. I mean, it's very this kind of like early, like more mercantile, more merchants having more powerful nations was the interesting thing about it. So and I knew it was vaguely like it still has roots in today how Europe works today. So sorry, I figured. I was told it was a thing that was more commonly taught.
It is interesting.
So.
That was Germanic, and that's very close to the Norse culture generally. Mm-hmm. I think that was a few centuries later, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, and I don't know that it ever really touched France. Maybe it did.
Not France. Britain into.
Yeah. But you have to forgive us, Sebastian. We are two Americans in California who are trying to speak knowledgeably to a French developer about a Nordic game.
There it is. There it all is.
Yeah, and we are both stumbling here because this is a game made by Europeans, drawing on European myth. That is being sold worldwide, and we don't want to look like fools, but we kind of do. And I also think it's part of that region's enduring impact on global culture that like a Viking themed game, a Nordic themed game can be this successful. Speaking of success, like have you noticed any trends in your time with it on early access? We brought you on because a few weeks ago we noticed that you were doing quite well on Steam's charts. I didn't see you there today. Have there been any significant spikes or drops, and were they tied to anything you guys did as game developers?
No, I mean, compared to our other games on Steam, it's the same kind of curve that we see on the stats, except bigger, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's the usual very strong at release and then going down slowly with bigger sales during weekends. And we'll see next week when we release the next clan if it has an impact. Generally, it does. When we look at our previous games, at least. So, and then there's the Steam sales, obviously, which always do huge spikes. But it's coherent with all the other games we've released, just with bigger numbers.
That's good to hear. Do you think you'll stick with early access at all going forward? Has it been a rewarding experience, or?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. It's already interesting. It's gonna be even more interesting for Northgard, but it depends on the game, really. I mean, on Evoland, it's a content-based game when there's a linear story, and for this type of game, it's not as relevant, especially because all the gameplay elements we had, even if we had a lot, they were all very well known and very relatively easy to put together. So there was no big surprise, no big innovation in the gameplay itself, even if the mix of gameplay was innovative itself. Yeah. Whereas in Northgard, there's a lot of tweaking and balancing to do, and there's a lot of features to add still. So that's where the feedback from the players is very, very important to us.
Nice. There's somebody in chat, Dog Duo, who is heaping praise on the UI of Northgard, saying more developers should learn to create nice and cohesive UIs like Shiro. So why don't we speak to that for a second, if you can? Were there any interesting challenges you faced in trying to design the UI for this game?
Well, I'm glad it worked because what we wanted to do is basically remove a lot of things from the UI and have it directly done in the game. So if you look at a screenshot of the game or at the game on your screen right now, that's all the UI minus 2 windows, and that's it. So for a strategy game, that's not a lot. I mean, if you look at Civilization, which is more complex, it has dozens of windows, and we have just what you see now plus 2, and those 2 are the tech tree and the victory conditions. And the way we did that is by having the building. So when you want to assign a villager to another job, you just right-click on the building and it will go there and turn it to a woodcutter or warrior or whatever you want. And there's a lot of features that are basically done in the game rather than by clicking on buttons. And we wanted to do that again to add to the atmosphere and to the survival aspect, and to, as a player, we wanted you to feel really inside the game and not playing with an Excel spreadsheet. So, which some strategy games tend to do sometimes a bit too much. So that's why we tried to do an UI that's not invasive and that's almost not there, basically.
So if you were going to sum that up as like a one piece of pithy game dev wisdom regarding UI design, is that what it would be? Like basically try to focus on designing UI that is integrated and holistic with the game world rather than like at a remove?
Yeah, I think if we can make it work with a strategy game, anybody can make it work with any other game.
Nice. Well, were there any other major lessons you learned from working on this project? We're wrapping up right now, but I want to give you a chance if there's something big that you want to share with fellow developers after working so long on this game. What would it be?
At least, well, there's one thing we wouldn't do again, which is, well, not that much at least, which is starting production as the same time as we started a prototype, almost. Just because we had people just hanging around that with not much to do, and we said, well, it's going to be Vikings, so try to, I don't know, maybe start modeling a couple of Vikings and a couple of houses, we'll see how it goes. And to some extent, that was not all bad because we worked quite fast with developing the game. But at the same time, we had some tough decisions afterwards. For example, when we began the game, there was no upgrade to the buildings. So they were all like you see right now, they are upgraded. And then when we worked more on the prototype and on the gameplay, we thought, now we have to have upgrade on the buildings, otherwise it's going to be too short to the end game and so on. So, and when we had to do that, we had to downgrade them with straw roofs instead of tiles, just because we didn't have any better way to make them look good without having them too advanced or too complex. Right. So we had to downgrade to have so it was not thought out from the start, and because we had started production already, we had a bit of a mess on our end, a bit of waste really. But it was not too bad, but yeah, the more you know about your core design before you start production, the happier you'll be.
Yeah, I think it's tricky to get that perfect balance of making sure everyone's time is being used well, but also not on things that are going to be thrown away early on. Brian, I noticed you just saved your game with balance is key. What have you learned in this?
I've learned. I did it. I'll pause. Well, actually, let me. Sorry, just trying to make sure I'm good because I got some Draugr portals about to come in. This is the round where I learned, like, I didn't just colonize at random. I looked at my resources and said, what do I need next? So I did a better job not getting caught off guard. I'm still trying to play on this expansionist, like, get more territory, do more cool stuff. Like, 'cause it's like, I like exploring. I like going interesting places and meeting interesting people and then killing them.
Sure.
No, not in real life, I swear. But I think what I'm just struck by is how much something that occurred to me while I was in the last game was how much I could play this game, and like I realized that other people trying to conquer me, because I was like, dang it, I have all these enemies who are running in and trying to get my stuff, and I realized, wait a minute, they're not trying to destroy me necessarily. They'll do well if they just take out one of my key resources. Like, all they have to do is just, like, kill some villagers or destroy this building. Like, they don't have to wipe me out. They just have to do that to really put me off track with the strategy. So, as opposed to other games where once I feel like, especially in 4X games, where once the enemy military starts to move in, the AI is just like, I will roll over you. And here, I'm just like, no, they're just trying to disrupt me, not destroy me, which is an interesting way to think about design and strategy and design. And I like it. I like how simple this game is. I like how accessible this is. It's very nice. Like, it fits my sitting down at a PC and trying to solve some interesting puzzles. Sometimes your scouts just die, which is interesting. Apparently,
Just like life.
But yeah, that's
Cool.
where my head's at. Thanks for joining us today, Sebastian.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll save my game once more, and then I will start the wrap-up ceremonies here. Thank you all for joining us today. We had a lot of fun. This has been the Gamasutra Twitch channel. We do a lot of interviews like this. We would try to get you in front of devs like Sebastien, so you can talk to them, ask them questions about making games. And we like asking them questions about making games too, so thank you so much for coming. If you enjoy this kind of conversation, please be sure to click the follow button down below. We'd love to have you as a follower, subscriber, take your pick. We're going to be coming back on Monday with someone from the BioWare team, a producer whose name escapes me right now, but we're going to be coming back to play some Mass Effect Andromeda on Monday, which will be great because the embargo will be up and we can talk about the many things people are saying about that game. Yeah, so thank you all for coming. Thank you, Nicholas Wagner, again from the chat. Thank you, Devornium, Uvan, etc. Everyone, have a nice day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.